Hi, how are you, Let me start by saying something that might challenge everything you've been told about motivation. If motivation were about talent, intelligence, or luck, you wouldn't be sitting here searching for it. And if motivation came from waiting, hoping, or pushing harder, most people would already have the life they want. But here's the truth most never hear. You don't lack motivation, you lack a system to generate it. Think about this for a moment. There have been days in your life when you felt unstoppable, clear, focused, driven, and there have been days when even simple tasks felt heavy. Same goals, same abilities, different results. Why? Because motivation is not a personality trait, it's a psychological state. And here's the exciting part. There is a simple psychology secret that once you understand it, allows you to create motivation and demand. Not just in the morning, not just when you feel inspired, all day long, especially when you don't feel like it. This isn't about hype. This isn't about shouting affirmations in the mirror. And this definitely isn't about forcing discipline until you burn out. What you're about to hear is how high performers stay driven even when life is chaotic, energy is low, and pressure is high. If you stay with me until the end, you won't just understand motivation. You'll know how to control it. So don't multitask. Don't scroll. Give me your focus for a few minutes. Because one idea in this message can change the way you show up every single day. Emotion is the invisible force behind every decision, habit, and action a human being takes. People often believe they are motivated by logic, facts, or willpower, but in reality, those elements only justify decisions that emotions have already made. When someone feels energized, inspired, confident, or even pressured, action becomes natural and almost effortless. On the other hand, when emotions such as boredom, fear, overwhelm, or doubt dominate, even simple tasks feel heavy and draining. This is why motivation rises and falls not based on intelligence or discipline, but on emotional state. Every behavior is driven by the desire to either gain pleasure or avoid pain, and both of these are emotional experiences. A person wakes up early to exercise not because they understand the health benefits intellectually, but because they emotionally associate movement with confidence, pride, or relief from guilt. Likewise, procrastination happens when the emotional discomfort of starting feels greater than the emotional pain of delay. The mind is constantly calculating which emotional outcome feels safer or more rewarding in the moment, and it always chooses that path. Emotion also determines how long motivation lasts. Logic can spark short bursts of action, but emotion sustains momentum. When someone is emotionally connected to a goal, they push through resistance, fatigue, and setbacks. This connection might come from imagining the joy of success, the impact on loved ones, or the pain of staying stuck. Without this emotional fuel, motivation fades quickly, no matter how well the plan is structured. Emotions are not random. They are shaped by focus, interpretation, and physical state. When attention is placed on limitations, past failures, or uncertainty, emotions contract and energy drops. When attention shifts to progress, possibility, or meaning, emotions expand and action follows naturally. This means motivation can be intentionally created by learning how to guide emotional responses instead of waiting for them to appear. Understanding that emotion drives action removes self-blame and replaces it with control. Instead of forcing discipline through exhaustion, one can learn to generate emotions that support movement and progress. By consciously linking positive emotions to desired actions and negative emotions to inaction, behavior begins to change automatically. Action stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like an emotional response that aligns naturally with purpose and desire. Focus is the gateway through which energy flows. Whatever the mind consistently pays attention to begins to dominate emotional experience, mental clarity, and physical drive. When attention is scattered or locked onto problems, limitations, or distractions, energy becomes diluted and motivation weakens. The brain cannot distinguish between what is important and what is habitual. It simply amplifies whatever it is repeatedly shown. This is why two people in the same situation can feel completely different levels of motivation based solely on where their focus rests. Energy is not something that appears randomly. It is generated by meaning. Meaning is created through focus. When a person focuses on why a task matters, who it impacts, or what it leads to, the mind assigns significance and energy rises. When focus stays on effort, discomfort, or uncertainty, the brain interprets the situation as a threat or burden, triggering resistance and fatigue. Motivation increases not because circumstances change, but because perception changes. The mind naturally drifts toward what is familiar, not what is empowering. This default setting often pulls attention toward worries, comparisons, unfinished tasks, or potential failures. Over time, this pattern conditions the nervous system to stay in a low energy state. Shifting focus requires intention and repetition, not force. The moment attention is redirected to progress, opportunity, or capability, the emotional state begins to change, and with it, the level of motivation available. Focus also determines identity. What a person repeatedly thinks about shapes what they believe about themselves. Focusing on effort reinforces struggle, while focusing on growth reinforces capability. When attention is placed on small wins, learning, and forward movement, confidence increases, making action feel lighter and more natural. Motivation becomes a byproduct of alignment rather than pressure. Sustained motivation throughout the day depends on managing focus moment by moment. External distractions, negative conversations, and internal self-talk constantly compete for attention. Allowing these elements to dominate drains energy without awareness. Choosing where to place attention restores control. By repeatedly asking what deserves focus right now and what outcome truly matters, mental clarity sharpens and energy consolidates. When focus is aligned with purpose, the mind stops wasting energy on resistance. Action feels cleaner, faster, and more intentional. Motivation does not spike and crash. It flows steadily because attention remains anchored to what fuels momentum rather than what depletes it. The body and mind operate as a single, inseparable system, and the state of the body has an immediate and powerful influence on mental drive and motivation. Long before conscious thought catches up, the nervous system is already interpreting posture, breathing patterns, muscle tension, and movement as signals about safety, confidence, and readiness. When the body is slouched, breathing is shallow, and movement is minimal, the brain receives the message that energy should be conserved, reducing motivation and initiative. This physical state quietly reinforces hesitation, doubt, and mental fatigue without any deliberate thought. Physiology works faster than thinking because it bypasses analysis. A simple change in posture can alter emotional chemistry in seconds. Standing upright with the chest open increases oxygen intake and signals alertness, while deep rhythmic breathing calms stress and improves clarity. Movement stimulates circulation and releases neurochemicals associated with focus and drive. These physical changes create an internal environment where motivation becomes more accessible, not because circumstances improved, but because the body signaled readiness to act. Most people attempt to change motivation by reasoning with themselves, using reminders, plans, or self-talk, but the body may still be communicating exhaustion or threat. This mismatch creates inner resistance. When physiology is aligned with desired action, the mind naturally follows. Energy increases because the system is synchronized. Even brief bursts of movement, such as stretching, walking, or deliberate breathing, can reset emotional states and restore momentum during low-energy moments. The body also stores emotional patterns. Repeated physical habits condition emotional responses over time. Sitting still for long periods conditions lethargy, while regular movement conditions alertness and engagement. Over time, the nervous system learns to associate motion with clarity and stillness with shutdown. This conditioning means motivation can be accessed more easily by activating the body first rather than waiting for. Mental readiness physiology influences perception as well. A strong physical state narrows focus towards solutions and possibilities, while a weak physical state exaggerates obstacles and effort. What feels overwhelming when tired can feel manageable when the body is energized. This shift is not imaginary. It is a biological response shaped by oxygen flow, muscle engagement, and hormonal balance. By consciously using the body as a tool, motivation becomes less dependent on mood or external inspiration. Physical control creates psychological leverage, allowing energy and drive to be generated on demand through deliberate movement, posture, and breath, rather than reliance on fleeting mental states. Human behavior is governed by a simple yet powerful mechanism: the constant evaluation of pain and pleasure. Every choice, whether conscious or automatic, is filtered through the question of what will feel better now or later. When action is associated with discomfort, uncertainty, or effort, the brain resists it. When inaction feels safe or familiar, it becomes the default. This is not a character flaw, but a survival-based wiring designed to conserve energy and avoid perceived threats. Motivation changes dramatically when these emotional associations are intentionally reshaped. If procrastination is linked to relief, comfort, or distraction, the brain will repeatedly choose it, even when long-term consequences are negative. Conversely, if taking action is linked to pride, progress, and emotional reward, movement becomes natural. The key lies in conditioning the nervous system to emotionally associate pain with staying stuck and pleasure with forward motion. This conditioning happens through repetition and emotional intensity. When someone vividly connects the cost of inaction to future regret, lost opportunities, or diminished self-respect, the emotional weight increases. The brain begins to perceive delay as dangerous rather than safe. At the same time, amplifying the emotional rewards of action by celebrating small wins, visualizing outcomes, and acknowledging progress trains the mind to crave movement. Over time, the internal resistance that once existed begins to dissolve. Language and imagery play a major role in this process. The way tasks are described internally determines their emotional charge. Describing action as exhausting or difficult strengthens pain associations, while framing it as empowering or liberating strengthens pleasure associations. The mind responds more strongly to images and emotions than logic, which is why visualization and emotional rehearsal are so effective in rewiring behavior. Consistency is more important than intensity in the long term. Small actions repeatedly paired with positive emotional feedback gradually override old patterns. Each completed task becomes proof that action leads to reward, not suffering. As this pattern solidifies, motivation becomes automatic rather than forced. The brain no longer debates whether to act because it has learned which option feels better when pain and pleasure are deliberately reassigned. Motivation stops being a struggle of willpower. Behavior shifts because the emotional scale has changed. Action becomes the path of least resistance, while avoidance feels uncomfortable, creating a self-sustaining loop of momentum and engagement. A compelling reason gives direction to energy and meaning to effort. Without a strong emotional purpose, motivation has no anchor and drifts depending on mood, comfort, or circumstance. People often know what they want to achieve, but they lack a deep emotional connection to why it matters, which causes motivation to fade when challenges appear. A powerful why transforms goals from tasks into missions, making effort feel justified and necessary rather than optional. The brain commits fully only when it senses significance. When a goal is tied to personal values, identity, or impact beyond oneself, emotional intensity increases. This intensity fuels persistence because the mind interprets obstacles as part of something meaningful, rather than as reasons to quit. A surface-level reason may spark short-term enthusiasm, but it cannot sustain momentum under pressure. A deeply felt purpose creates resilience because quitting would feel like betraying something important. A compelling why is emotional, not abstract. It is rooted in experiences, relationships, and desired states of being. It might come from the desire to provide security, prove capability, create freedom, or avoid repeating painful patterns from the past. The more vividly this reason is imagined and felt, the more power it holds. When purpose is clear, the mind automatically prioritizes actions that align with it and filters out distractions that do not. Clarity also plays a crucial role. Vague reasons generate weak emotional responses, while specific reasons generate strong ones. Knowing exactly who benefits, how life changes, and what is at stake sharpens emotional engagement. This clarity turns motivation into a natural response rather than a forced behavior. Action feels congruent because it aligns with an internal narrative that feels true and necessary. A strong why also stabilizes motivation across fluctuating emotions. On days when energy is low or confidence is shaken, purpose acts as a steady reference point. It provides a reason to act even when feelings are inconsistent. This does not eliminate discomfort, but it gives discomfort meaning, making it easier to endure. When purpose is internalized, motivation becomes self-renewing. Each action reinforces identity and direction, strengthening emotional commitment over time. Progress no longer depends on external rewards or pressure because the drive comes from alignment with something deeply personal and emotionally charged. Daily rituals create structure for motivation by turning desired behaviors into automatic patterns rather than decisions that require constant effort. Motivation becomes unreliable when it depends on mood or inspiration, but rituals remove uncertainty. B. Embedding action into routine. When specific actions are repeated at the same time or in the same sequence each day, the brain begins to anticipate them, reducing resistance and conserving mental energy. This anticipation creates momentum before conscious thought interferes. Rituals work because they condition both the mind and body simultaneously. Repeated behaviors linked to consistent cues train the nervous system to shift into a productive state on command. A simple morning sequence involving movement, focused breathing, or intentional reflection can signal alertness and purpose. Over time, these actions trigger motivation automatically, not because of discipline, but because the brain recognizes the pattern and responds accordingly. Consistency strengthens emotional association. When rituals are performed daily, the mind starts linking them with clarity, progress, and control. This emotional reinforcement makes it easier to begin tasks without internal debate. Motivation no longer needs to be generated from scratch because it is carried forward from previous days. Each ritual becomes a psychological anchor that stabilizes energy and focus throughout the day. Rituals also protect motivation from external disruption. Stress, distractions, and unexpected challenges can drain energy quickly, but established routines provide a reset mechanism. Returning to a familiar ritual restores emotional balance and mental clarity. This reliability creates confidence, as motivation no longer feels fragile or dependent on circumstances. Small rituals are more powerful than dramatic changes because they are sustainable. Brief, intentional actions, repeated consistently, create compound effects over time. These actions reinforce identity and build trust with oneself. Each completed ritual becomes evidence of follow-through, strengthening self-belief and emotional momentum. As rituals accumulate, they form a system that generates motivation rather than consuming it. Action flows with less friction because the brain no longer negotiates whether to begin. The day unfolds with rhythm and intention, allowing motivation to remain steady, renewable, and self-sustaining across changing demands and emotional states. As we come to the end of this message, remember this above all else. Motivation is not something you wait for, chase, or hope will show up one day. It is something you create deliberately, moment by moment. When you understand that emotion drives action, you stop blaming yourself and start directing yourself. When you control your focus, your energy follows. When you use your body to shift your state, motivation becomes instant instead of delayed. When you rewire pain and pleasure, action becomes natural instead of forced. When your reason is strong enough, excuses lose their power. And when you build daily rituals, motivation stops being fragile and becomes reliable. Nothing in this process requires perfection. It requires awareness and repetition. SM. All shifts, practice consistently, change how you think, feel, and act. The moment you stop waiting for motivation and start generating it, you reclaim control over your days, your progress, and your future. The tools you've heard are not theories. They are levers you can use immediately. The real transformation happens when you apply them, not once, but daily. Until they become part of who you are, you already have everything you need to move forward. The only question now is whether you will use it. Take this knowledge, apply it with intention, and let momentum do the rest. I wish you clarity, strength, and unstoppable energy on your journey ahead. Good luck, stay focused, and thank you for giving me your time and attention.